Bugs Bunny is remembered as animation's smartest survivor, a trickster who outwitted hunters, kings, and monsters with a carrot and a smirk. But buried beneath the laughter is a darker legacy, a collection of cartoons so controversial that Warner Bros. Quietly removed them from television forever. Preserved but never promoted, this is the banned side of Bugs Bunny. Number 11. Coal Black and Debban Dwarfs. Released in the middle of World War II, this cartoon is often described as both a technical triumph and a cultural disaster. From a purely animation standpoint, it pushed Warner Bros. Style forward with aggressive timing, rubbery movement, and jazz-driven energy that later animators openly admired. Every frame moves fast, loud, and confident. The problem is what those frames depict. The short relies almost entirely on exaggerated racial caricatures rooted in minstrel imagery. Character designs feature distorted facial features and dialect humor that turns an entire culture into a visual joke. What was intended as parody now reads as cruelty. Even during its original release, some audiences felt uneasy, but the industry largely ignored those concerns. By the late 1960s, Warner Bros. Quietly removed the cartoon from all television packages. Unlike other controversial shorts, it was never re-edited or softened. The studio later acknowledged that the cartoon crossed a line that could not be defended even with historical disclaimers. Today, it exists only in archives and academic screenings where it is discussed as an artifact rather than entertainment. Coal Black and Debban Dwarf stands as the most infamous example of why classic animation is not automatically harmless. It proves that innovation and prejudice once shared the same screen and that technical brilliance does not excuse cultural damage. And number 10. All This and Rabbit Stew. This cartoon places Bugs Bunny opposite a hunter whose portrayal is built almost entirely on racial stereotypes. The humor depends on exaggerated fear reactions, broken speech patterns, and visual shorthand that reduces a character to a caricature. Bugs outsmarts his opponent as usual, but the victory comes at the expense of dignity. What makes this short especially uncomfortable is its casual tone. There is no narrative reason for the stereotypes beyond easy laughs. The cartoon reflects how normalized such imagery had become in Hollywood entertainment during the early 40s. Audiences were expected to laugh without question. As cultural standards changed, the cartoon became impossible to defend. Warner Bros. Removed it from syndication and never restored it for broadcast or streaming. Unlike some other shorts, it is rarely even referenced in promotional retrospectives. Today, All This and Rabbit Stew is remembered less for Bugs Bunny and more as evidence of how casually racism once appeared in family entertainment. It is preserved not because it deserves celebration, but because history needs witnesses. Its absence from television is not censorship, but acknowledgement. Number 9. Hiawatha's Rabbit Hunt. Marketed as a literary parody, this cartoon adapts a famous poem into slapstick comedy. In practice, it portrays Native American characters using exaggerated visuals, simplified language, and broad stereotypes. Bugs Bunny once again plays the clever outsider, while indigenous culture becomes the punchline. At the time, parodying folklore and poetry was common in animation. What was ignored was how these portrayals reinforced damaging myths. The characters are not individuals, but symbols designed for mockery. Humor replaces humanity. As awareness grew, the cartoon became increasingly uncomfortable to watch. Warner Bros. Eventually removed it from television rotation and never reintroduced it. Unlike wartime propaganda shorts, this one lacked any historical justification beyond outdated humor. Today it appears only in scholarly discussions about representation in early animation. Hiawatha's Rabbit Hunt demonstrates how easily entertainment borrowed from real cultures without responsibility. Its ban reflects a recognition that parody without understanding can cause lasting harm. Number 8. Fresh Hair. Produced during the most anxious years of World War II, this cartoon reflects the raw fear and anger that followed Pearl Harbor. Bugs Bunny is captured by enemy soldiers and quickly turns the situation into slapstick chaos. On the surface, it plays like standard wartime bravado, with Bugs humiliating his captors and restoring American confidence. Beneath that surface lies something far more troubling. The enemy characters are drawn using extreme racial caricatures. Facial features, speech patterns, and behavior are exaggerated to the point of dehumanization. The cartoon does not simply mock the enemy as soldiers, it mocks them as a people. This was common in propaganda of the era, but animation amplified it in ways that feel especially uncomfortable today. Unlike some wartime cartoons that rely on situational comedy, this one uses racial distortion as its primary weapon. That choice is why it remains restricted. Warner Bros. Has largely kept fresh hair out of modern circulation, choosing not to pair it with disclaimers or edits. The tone is too aggressive and the imagery too explicit. Fresh hair stands as a reminder that Bugs Bunny was once used as a cultural weapon. It shows how entertainment can be shaped by fear and how easily humor becomes cruelty when driven by nationalism. The cartoon survives as a historical artifact, but not as family entertainment. Number 7. Angel Puss. Angel Puss is often cited as one of the most uncomfortable cartoons Warner Bros. Ever released. The story revolves around a black child character who believes a cat has returned as a ghost to haunt him. On paper, it sounds like harmless slapstick. In execution, it becomes something else entirely. The child character is drawn using heavy minstrel-era stereotypes. Facial design, body language, and speech patterns all lean into caricature. The humor depends on fear reactions and exaggerated behavior that turn the character into a spectacle rather than a person. Unlike other banned cartoons where stereotypes appear briefly, this one centers them. By the time television syndication expanded in the 1950s, the cartoon was already viewed as unacceptable. It quietly disappeared from circulation long before many others were flagged. Warner Bros. Never attempted to revise or soften it. The decision was simply to remove it. Today, Angel Puss is rarely screened outside academic environments. It is discussed as an example of how normalized racist imagery once was in children's entertainment. Its ban reflects a clear line drawn by modern standards. Some material cannot be reframed or excused. It can only be acknowledged and retired. Number 6. Jungle Jitters. Although Bugs Bunny does not appear directly, Jungle Jitters remains essential to understanding why later cartoons were banned. This early short depicts African natives through colonial fantasy. Characters are portrayed as primitive, superstitious, and comically violent. Every visual choice reinforces stereotypes rather than storytelling. Released in the late 1930s, the cartoon reflects attitudes that were widespread in Hollywood at the time. Exotic locations were treated as playgrounds for mockery. Cultures were reduced to costumes and gags. Animation simply exaggerated what live-action films were already doing. Warner Bros. Banned Jungle Jitters decades ago and has never reversed that decision. It is frequently cited in animation history courses as a clear example of why censorship became necessary. The cartoon is not subtle and not defensible even with historical framing. Jungle Jitters exists today as a warning. It shows the foundation upon which later problematic cartoons were built. Its removal marked one of the earliest acknowledgments that some entertainment causes more harm than laughter. Number 5. Clean Pastures. Clean Pastures was conceived as a musical parody blending swing rhythms with cartoon spectacle. On a technical level, the short is lively. Timing is sharp. Musical synchronization is confident. The animation moves with a bounce that reflects the popularity of jazz culture in late 1930s America. But the visual language it uses is inseparable from racist caricature. The cartoon depicts black characters through exaggerated facial features and minstrel-derived imagery. Heaven and hell become stages for stereotype-driven jokes rather than satire. What might have been intended as playful exaggeration now reads as mockery embedded into every frame. The humor relies on visual shorthand that strips characters of individuality. As television syndication expanded after World War II, Clean Pastures quietly vanished. Unlike later cartoons, Warner Bros. Did not attempt edits or disclaimers. The studio recognized that the core premise itself was the problem. Removing individual gags would not fix the foundation. Today, Clean Pastures is referenced mainly in academic discussions about early animation and jazz influence. Its musical ambition is acknowledged, but always with caution. The cartoon illustrates how popular culture once borrowed heavily from black artistry, while simultaneously reducing black identity to caricature. Its ban is not an erasure, but an admission that technical charm cannot outweigh cultural harm. Number 4. Sunday Go to Meetin' Time. This short presents itself as a morality tale. A church-going character strays into temptation and faces supernatural consequences. Structurally, it resembles classic cautionary folklore. Visually, it draws almost entirely from minstrel traditions that were already becoming dated even at the time of release. Characters are depicted with exaggerated designs and broad behaviors meant to provoke laughter rather than empathy. Religious imagery is mixed with caricature in ways that turn belief and identity into spectacle. The story intends to warn against vice but ends up reinforcing stereotypes instead. Warner Bros. Removed the cartoon from circulation long before public debates about media representation became common. Its absence from television was not controversial because few defended it. By the 1960s, it was already considered a relic of attitudes the studio wanted to distance itself from. Today, Sunday Go-to-Meetin' Time survives only in controlled archival settings. It is often cited as an example of how animation borrowed freely from vaudeville without considering consequence. The cartoon stands as evidence that even moral stories can be deeply harmful when told through dehumanizing lenses. Number 3. Goldilocks and the Javan Bears. This jazz-infused parody reimagines a fairy tale through musical energy and urban styling. Animation historians often note its fluid movement and inventive staging. Music drives every scene. Rhythm dictates pacing. On paper, it represents a confident evolution of Warner Bros. Musical cartoons. What undermines it completely is how that energy is framed. Characters are drawn using racial coding and exaggerated physical traits that reduce them to visual stereotypes. The short celebrates jazz aesthetics while simultaneously mocking the people associated with that culture. Style becomes a mask for caricature. As cultural awareness grew, the cartoon became increasingly indefensible. Warner Bros. Removed it from broadcast packages and never restored it. Unlike some other shorts, it is rarely shown even with disclaimers because the imagery is central rather than incidental. Goldilocks and the Javan Bears demonstrates a recurring pattern in early animation. Innovation and prejudice often shared the same space. Its ban reflects a recognition that artistic flair does not excuse harmful representation. The cartoon remains preserved, but permanently restricted as a reminder of that contradiction. Number 2. The Isle of Pingo Pongo. Among all the cartoons removed from circulation, this one is often cited as the most extreme. The Isle of Pingo Pongo presents a fictional island culture built entirely from racial caricature. Language, behavior, music, and appearance are exaggerated to the point of grotesque parody. The cartoon does not merely rely on stereotypes, it is constructed from them. Released in the late 1930s, the short reflects how animation freely borrowed colonial attitudes from live-action cinema. Exotic locations were treated as joke factories rather than cultures. Every gag in the cartoon reinforces the idea that the people being depicted are primitive, foolish, and inherently comedic. There is no counterbalance, no satirical framing, no narrative justification. Even compared to other banned cartoons, this one stands apart. Its imagery is relentless. It does not hide its intent behind metaphor or wartime context. That is why its ban was swift and permanent. Warner Bros. Never attempted revisions or disclaimers. The studio recognized that the cartoon could not be responsibly reframed. Today, the Isle of Pingo Pongo is discussed almost exclusively in academic settings. It is used to illustrate why the so-called censored 11 were removed and why some material crosses a line beyond recovery. Its existence serves as a warning about how easily entertainment can normalize dehumanization when unchecked. Number 1. The Banned Legacy of Bugs Bunny. There is no single final cartoon that closes this story. The true number 1 is the legacy itself. Bugs Bunny remains one of animation's most enduring icons. Clever, resilient, and endlessly influential. But his history is intertwined with an era when harmful stereotypes were not questioned. They were broadcast. Warner Bros. Made a deliberate choice not to erase these cartoons, but to remove them from casual consumption. Preservation without promotion became the compromise. The studio acknowledged that hiding history entirely would be dishonest, but celebrating it would be worse. These banned cartoons are not mistakes buried out of shame. They are artifacts of a system that rewarded speed laughs and familiarity over responsibility. Bugs Bunny survived because the character evolved. The cartoons that did not evolve were left behind. Understanding this legacy does not diminish Bugs Bunny. It contextualizes him. It reminds audiences that progress in entertainment came from recognizing harm and choosing not to repeat it. The absence of these cartoons on television is not censorship. It is accountability. The banned bugs. Bunny cartoons remain locked away, not to be forgotten, but to be understood. They document a time when animation reflected society's worst assumptions without question. Preserved but restricted, they stand as proof that laughter without awareness can leave lasting damage. History matters, even when it is uncomfortable.